Another amazing band to come out of Southern California during the mid-1970s, well into the early 80s, and well into today, drummer Burleigh Drummond from the great band Ambrosia. Burleigh, how we doing today, my friend?
JJ, I'm doing great, and thank you for having me on the show.
You got it, my friend. So you grew up here in Southern California, I think in San Pedro, and who were the major influences musically for you growing up as far as drummers?
Well, it's infinite in its scope. Everything from I ended up at UCLA and I got into African drumming, but Elvin Jones from the Coltrane Quartet, Ringo, Traffic, Ginger Baker, Mitch Mitchell, Art Blakey. It's just so vast.
Right.
Basically, every drummer I ever see, wipes me out. I'm just I'm a drum nut.
How did you guys come up with the band name Ambrosia? I'm sure it had something to do with the different textures and shades and styles of your music as a band. Am I correct?
Well, yeah. In the definition used to be it was the nectar of the Greek gods that kept them immortal, and so we thought, our music's going to be immortal. So Ambrosia, how appropriate. But actually, we had a band named Joe Porta of the band named the band Ambergris Might, and it turns out there was another band with that name. So he looked in the dictionary, and the very next word was Ambrosia, and so it was fate. It just had to be.
Very cool. Now, Burleigh, tell me the story about when you guys went and saw King Crimson at the Whiskey A Go Go in 1969, and how that really changed the influences for the band's musical direction.
Well, yeah. I'd say before that, the band was very, and it still is, harmony-driven, very Crosby, Stills and Nash, Beatles, Beach Boy, all the the harmony bands,
mm-hmm.
and then it just so happened we stumbled into the Whiskey to see the King Crimson, and it just wiped us out. That's kind of where the progressive light came on in Ambrosia's mind, was seeing King Crimson for the first time and realizing, that musically it could be adventurous and still we could keep our harmonies. It'd be nice to incorporate some interesting music underneath the harmony.
All right, and I heard a story, Burleigh, that Herb Alpert let you guys record some demos at his famous A&M Records recording studio in Los Angeles. Is that correct?
Yeah, well, we auditioned for Herb Alpert.
Okay.
They set up an audition for A&M, and and we were not even out of college. We were about as green as you could be, mm-hmm. and I think we were shaking so hard up there that I'm surprised anybody could get a note out. We were so nervous I couldn't even hit my bass drum.
Wow,
my foot would not even work, and so anyway. But he was gracious enough, even though he didn't think we were, right or ready for him or for that label. He let us go in the studio, and we did 3 songs. And one of the songs, what happened was we didn't get signed to A&M, but later on those demos were used to get us a deal on 20th Century Fox.
Yeah, I love that track. Now, actually, tell me about that. So the self-titled debut album was actually engineered by Alan Parsons and was released in 1975 and was also home to the band's first top 20 hit single, Holding On to Yesterday. Now, how was that song invented? How did you guys put that together?
Well, okay, so the song was written, very early. Well, the hook, I Keep Holding On, mm-hmm. was written very early in Ambrosia's get-together, and Joe wrote it, and it was very country. It was almost like a country version of it, and when I joined the band, it was written before I was in the band, that part of it,
mm-hmm.
but it was always very endearing to me that I thought that had great potential, that hook. So I was always pushing for that song. And I was listening to B.B. King one night, and The Thrill Is Gone came on. And what I wanted to do, I asked the guys if we could approach Holding On with more of a bluesy element, like say B.B. King was cutting it. So what happened was it was the merger of kind of a countryish song with kind of a B.B. King bluesy approach, and the end result was Holding On Yesterday.
Okay, cool. And the band returned back into the studio in 1976 with the album "Somewhere I've Never Traveled," and the record. I remember the record cover itself on the sleeve was folded into like a large pyramid. Is that right?
Yeah, you could fold it out into a pyramid. I mean, one of our techs at the time that was working with us was very into pyramid power, so he was, I mean, and we were very adventurous at the time, and why not? It was supposed to keep your razor blades sharp forever. It was supposed to, it would keep other substances,
Right.
fresh and
Right, of course.
whatever, and so we did it, and Alan Parsons, by the way, you mentioned him earlier. He co-produced that album with us. He just mixed our first album.
Okay.
He didn't actually record our first album. Chuck Johnson, another engineer, recorded it.
Okay.
And Alan came and mixed it after we had heard his version of Dark Side of the Moon. We called him up in Abbey Road. We called Abbey Road looking for him, and he answered the phone.
Wow.
And that's pretty interesting.
Very cool. Very cool. Yeah, I mean, Alan was, George Martin's right-hand man there at Abbey Road Studios when they were doing their last two albums, which is incredible.
Yeah, I mean, no, his knowledge of sound is amazing. He's a sound expert for sure.
Burleigh, how were you guys picked up to become a part of the musical documentary All This in World War II and recorded the Beatles classic Magical Mystery Tour? I love how you guys recorded that too.
Oh, well, thanks. That was the brainchild of the Russ Reagan, who was the president of 20th Century Records at that time, and so he discovered most of the artists on that record, like Leo Sayer and Elton John and people like that.
Mm-hmm.
So he pulled everybody together to do a track, and that album is pretty amazing for the quality of music that's on it. I mean, you've got Elton John and Rod Stewart, and I mean those and Leo Sayer's tracks. Some amazing Lucy. I think Elton did Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds, and it's amazing. I mean, great stuff came out of that album. I think the film was kind of a flop, or became a very artsy thing, but the record is ridiculous.
That's always cool to be a part of something like that.
Oh, yeah.
Something that was big but not big mainstream, but something like a nugget that some kid can find and be inspired by.
Oh yeah, no, and it was a thrill. We got to work with a famous producer named Lou Reisner, who came in and produced. It's amazing.
And in the year of 1978, Live Beyond L.A. was released to the world and marked the band's biggest pop breakthrough with the first gold single for you guys, How Much I Feel. What's the background on that particular song, Burleigh?
Well, that song was kind of a blessing and a curse. I mean, it gave us exposure to a kind of a different market. And AM was, AM and FM were separate entities back then.
Right.
And so we kind of thought of ourselves as, or wannabe Beatles, I mean, we thought we could do any kind of song, any kind of style, because it was all kinds of styles were part of our repertoire, and we had experience playing. I mean, once we started doing some prog stuff, it didn't mean we didn't love R&B anymore. I mean, we love playing R&B, we love playing country, we love pop, and we love prog. So we thought, hey, Dave Pack kind of wrote the genesis of the song, and we thought, well, let's do it to the best of our ability. And so obviously it came out and became a big hit. But we'd go on the road and like the FM stations, we'd walk in and they were like, they basically called us traitors, like how could you do this, And there's like, what?
We just recorded a song. That's all we did.
We just recorded a song. It's like we're not telling you to live your life according to it. It's just
Right.
like it's a song.
Yeah, that's so funny how FM and AM were so different back then, and now it's completely reversed, where FM is all top 40 and AM is just the underground stuff once again.
Yeah,
it's just funny how the revolution of radio has just completely gone, I should say, upside down.
Yeah.
And then in 1980, Warner Brothers Records released 180, the album, which was produced two great big, huge hits of that year. The first being Biggest Part of Me, which rocketed to number 3 on the national charts here in America. How did you guys come up with that amazing song, Biggest Part of Me?
I mean, if you talk to each individual in the group, they're probably going to have a different answer.
Right.
But we used to practice, or get together, 6 hours a day. We were playing constantly and writing, there was always 50 songs written for every album and then whittled down. And I was very into that particular groove because I was studying with a teacher named Freddie Gruber.
Mm-hmm.
He's kind of a drum teacher legend. And he had me doing these kind of exercises or techniques, playing, and it was really appropriate for that kind of 16th note groove.
Right.
And so, I was just playing it constantly. And I think Ambrosia wrote about 5 songs with that groove, like Living on My Own, Biggest Part of Me, Dancing by Myself. It was all those songs were just because I wouldn't stop playing that groove.
You like the groove. Hey, if you like a groove, you got to go with it.
Oh, yeah, I was, So what happens was, we would just jam forever. Then people would take it home, and if they heard something caught their ear, they would try to write something to it. And so
right.
A lot of those songs, came out of, jams and things like that. And that Biggest Part of Me, Dave came in one day, and he had that cool keyboard progression, and that was the beginning of the Biggest Part of Me.
And I know, Burleigh, the second single off the 180 album was the tune You're the Only Woman, You and I. How was that song put together?
Well, pretty much the same. I mean, they're all inspired by kind of group interplay, and then, somebody would come in with the lyric, and that would be the start of it. But, this is kind of a strange story, but when we were cutting our first album, we were kind of asked by Russ Regan to go in the progressive direction.
Mm-hmm.
That's great. We were having a great time doing that. But at night, to support ourselves, we were playing a female gay bar.
Really?
Right down. It was right down the street from the studio, and that's how we survived.
Wow.
Because we didn't have any money, but we would just play 4 sets of R&B all
mm-hmm.
night.
Mm-hmm.
So here we are. We're progressive during the day, and then to go get money for food, we go play R&B all night.
Huh? Burleigh, that just means you guys are fantastic musicians that can play every aspect of music.
Well, thanks, but we respect all aspects of music.
Absolutely.
But so even though we were doing the progressive stuff, and we love the progressive stuff, and that probably is our favorite thing to play.
Right.
We were nurturing this R&B thing, which kind of manifested itself in later albums.
Oh yeah, absolutely, and it crossed over to top 40 and pop and everything in between. Now, what are you guys working on today, Burleigh?
Well, we just in the process of doing a new record, and we have some new tunes coming up.
Very cool.
I think it's going to be a blend of everything. It'll have some. It'll be Ambrosia, which is kind of a melting pot of everything put in. And the one thing about Ambrosia that we always seem to build songs around is a strong lyric and a strong melody.
Mm-hmm.
So that kind of really, even when we're doing prog stuff, we never get too far from a really good melody. And it has to be a song about something. It has to have meaning.
Yes, absolutely. It's got to tell a story, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so that kind of defines Ambrosia. It's not just licks for licks' sake.
Right. No, I understand. You guys are a very deep conscious band. I do know that. And what's the best website for your fans to reach you guys at?
Well, there's ambrosialive.net, and there's also Reverb Nation, Ambrosia Reverb Nation.
Okay. All right. And, wonderful.
Those are 2 that you can get us on. Or you can just attack us after the show.
Which they can actually do, Burleigh, just so you know. This Friday night, Burleigh and the guys of Ambrosia are going to be performing live at the Coach House in San Juan Capistrano. That's this Friday night right here in Southern California, which is a great thing. Go out and support the band and support the guys. Mr. Burleigh Drummond of the band Ambrosia, thank you so much.
My pleasure, JJ, and thank you for having me.